Have you ever wondered what happens when a traditionalist psychologist takes on modern cultural debates? Well, Jordan Peterson has been doing exactly that, and let's just say, the alarm has been sounded. For 7 years and counting, Peterson has been fearlessly challenging what he calls radical ideologies. But what drives this renowned psychologist to take such bold stands?
There are artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
What makes a mild-mannered psychology professor become one of the most controversial voices in modern culture? And why do millions hang on to his every word? When asked if he would use alternative pronouns, Jordan Peterson's response was crystal clear.
And why not?
Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation.
You know what's interesting about Peterson? He's not your typical social commentator throwing around buzzwords. When someone asked him about using different pronouns, his response wasn't what you'd expect. Instead of a simple yes or no, he dropped this truth bomb.
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive.
Mind-blowing, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. Peterson isn't actually advocating for being offensive. He's more like that friend who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Speaking of telling it like it is, let's talk about something funny. You know how people keep calling Peterson brave for speaking his mind? Interestingly, Peterson bristles when people praise his bravery. His response?
There's a line in the Old Testament, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And I think it's more like that. It's not that I'm courageous, it's that I'm afraid of the right things. So when I made my videos, it wasn't like that didn't make me nervous. But I was less nervous about going back to bed and not saying what I had to say than I was about making the videos. Because I know where this is going. I don't want to go there. And so it's not so much courage, it's that it's a matter of, it's less risky to say something than to remain silent when you know there's something to be said. I know that to be the case. And so lots of times in life, it's like there's no pathway forward that's going to shield you from risk. You get to pick this risk, or you get to pick this risk. And I think I picked the lesser risk. And that might be wise, but I'm not so sure it's courageous.
That free speech is the mechanism by which we keep our society functioning. As a consequence of free speech and the ability to speak, people can put their finger on problems, articulate what those problems are, solve them, and come to a consensus. But wait, it gets better. Remember those times in school when everyone was trying to be special? Peterson has something hilarious to say about that too. He points out how we're all falling over ourselves to be unique, when maybe we should just try being honest first. Here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed how society tends to oversimplify issues? Well, Peterson certainly has, and he's not having any of it. Take the gender debate, for example. While others are shouting from opposite corners, Peterson's over here saying, hold up. Let's actually look at the science. And speaking of science, don't worry, we won't get too nerdy here. Peterson drops this bombshell. Men and women are actually more similar than different. But then he adds the kicker. It's the small differences that create huge impacts. Nothing concerns Peterson more than how gender identity issues affect young people. He's particularly troubled by how some professionals handle teenage body dysmorphia. Peterson argues that medical professionals shouldn't rush to affirm or deny identity. Instead, their role is to help young people explore and develop their identity naturally. Instead of jumping on the affirm everything bandwagon, he's like that cool uncle who asks, have you really thought this through? His point is that maybe we should help young folks explore who they are, instead of rushing to conclusions.
If you're a therapist or a physician, you don't affirm someone's identity. That's not your job. And your job is not to deny their identity either. Your job is to help them explore their identity and hopefully to develop it.
You might be thinking, okay, but does this guy ever lighten up? Actually, yes. When people try to corner him in debates, he often responds with surprisingly witty comebacks. Like that time someone accused him of being anti-women, and he pulled out statistics showing how men have their own challenges. Talk about a Uno reverse card. Peterson isn't just some angry guy yelling at clouds. He's actually pretty emotional about helping people find meaning in their lives. Whether you agree with him or not, you can't deny he's got people thinking and talking about important issues. So, what's the takeaway from all this? Maybe it's that we need to have better conversations. Maybe it's that truth is more important than comfort. Or maybe it's just that a Canadian professor can surprisingly spice up cultural debates. Speaking of conversations, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Peterson's takes on modern culture? Drop your comments below, and don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. Want more content that makes you think while keeping you entertained? Hit subscribe and turn on those notifications. Share this video with that friend who loves a good intellectual debate. You know exactly who we're talking about. And as Professor Peterson would say, the truth might make you uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens. Until next time, keep thinking freely and questioning everything.